Hello and welcome to episode number 51. I'm joined by the man who thinks that the Sixers are going to win a playoff game and a series, Vince. And Dan watched the first press conference for that Eagles head coach, and he's more than skeptical. I'm Mike.
I am Daniel.
And I'm Vincent, and I think they won a single game last year in the playoffs.
Allegedly.
So that'll be a low bar to pass. We'll see.
No one is beating the Nets. Possibly not happening. This is not a basketball show. We are talking comic books. We've done this 50 times, and this is the 51st time. And, let's just do the thing and get on with it.
Okay, so our first issue to kick off our show is Batman Black and White #2, featuring 5 different stories. The first story is The Unjust Judge, written by Tom King with art by Mitch Gerrits. So Batman finds a priest basically in a collapsed church and has a good heart with him before the priest passes away. We get some pretty good emotional art going on here by Mitch. I really like this story. And I thought it was really good. So not really much else to say with that. The next story we have here is All Cats Are Gray by Sophie Campbell. And this is a silent story of Batman chasing Catwoman around. And after she escapes, she runs into a white cat, which actually gives her a brilliant idea of creating a white cat suit. So she's able to elude Batman with this suit, and just a really good use of the color medium, obviously, for what this book gets its namesake from, using the white suit rather than the black suit, I guess. So that's kind of cool, kind of clever use there. The next story is The Spill by Gabriel Hardman with art by Karina Betko. Batman is stuck in the Batmobile, and it's in a leaking dam area as Joker stands over it, kind of mocking Batman, watching Batman meet his fate. So surprisingly, Joker frees Batman because he does not want him to die so quickly and easily. Just as the two are talking, the dam bursts and it frees Batman, I guess, and it saves Joker from drowning. Excuse me, I can't talk today. It's been a long week. Batman saves Joker from drowning after he himself gets free. The Joker tells Batman that he owes him one, and what he owes him is that he owes him the chance to watch Batman die. So, yeah, really, I guess, interesting, not really interesting, but usual take, I guess, on Joker's character that we kind of see here, but just, I guess, an interesting scenario with the dam and everything. Our fourth story is Duel by Dustin Weaver. Batman is going up against a demon-like alter ego of himself, and it's kind of like a air fight. They're kind of fighting with bat wings in the sky, I guess. And it turns out this alter ego was serving some type of alien beings, and he actually ends up defeating the demon-like alter ego and killing him, which really creeps Batman out. And he finds out that there's this mothership that this creature originated from. So he boards the ship to find a zombie-like creature who is claiming that Batman is his son. So we'll see how that goes. The last story here is The Devil in the Detail by David Aha. This is our last story, like I said. And it's drawn and set in the style of 1949 Batman. So about 10 years into the character's existence, I guess. I think 1939 was his first appearance. Anyways, we see our hero tracking down a culprit in a murder case. So really playing up the detective aspect of Batman. We get some great stylistic choices from David in this issue, kind of using the stubby ears that we, I guess, saw in this era of Batman, and also laying out the panels kind of like a 1940s comic serial. I'm not sure if that was intended or not, but it was really interesting. Turns out that Batman has arrived at a dead end in his investigation. So, whoops. I like this story. I feel like everyone was distinct in its own right, and I don't know. I like these little vignette stories we get of Batman. I do have a volume of Batman Black and White, like the older volume series, like on my shelf here. So the more I read of this, the more I actually really want to go back and like read that now. But yeah, what do you guys think of these stories?
I think it's going to be hard to top to bottom the creative talent on this issue. I think they outdid issue 1, which we loved issue 1. We made that a pick of the week. But this one, I think top to bottom, like there was no bad stories. It was like either like pretty good to great all the way through. And yeah, that the David Aja story where he's basically, and Dan, you're talking 1949 Batman. It's not really 1949 Batman. It's wildly different, in terms of style at that point. But what he is doing is he's working with everything's horizontal because it's a newspaper strip, and it's framed like a newspaper strip. And even you have like the ending of some pages be like "See you Monday," so as you're reading it, you're essentially getting into a Batman newspaper strip like that never existed, but he made, and it's really cool to see that. The Sophie Campbell story is probably, I think, actually is the surprise. My favorite here, just with working with the art and the color medium that you have to work with here. That's perfect. But yeah, top to bottom, this is great. Gabe Hardman is absolutely beautiful, and then also Mitch Gerrard's and even the Dustin Weaver stuff. Like, I know Dustin Weaver has a kind of heavy Jim Lee influence, but like those giant double page splashes of dueling Batwings through Gotham kind of remind me of like some late 90s, early 2000s Gotham City looks there, especially with like the heavy machinery Batwing where it's like this giant monstrosity. I kind of like to see that. And then also like there's some costume keys here and there. Dustin Weaver's totally doing the 89 suit, which looks great in black and white. But other than that, no, it's a masterclass issue. It's pretty much as close as you can get to a perfect comic book in my eyes.
Yeah, this is basically perfect. I laughed a little bit when I opened the Tom King story, and of course he's quoting Bible verses, but it was a fitting tie-in, obviously. And then, yeah, I thought Sophie Campbell was just brilliant. She is, I believe, I don't know if she actually draws every issue still or in general, but she's a current writer and artist on IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She picked up the book after issue 100 or whatever. And like she created and introduced, and she used to draw it for stretches before that. She created and introduced the new like female turtle, Jenica, I think that's her name. Hardman's art, like I'm not 100% certain like when he's doing physical media versus if he does some digital stuff. I'm sure he can do both. I know he does a lot of work outside comics on storyboards and things like that. So, but so it might not be traditional art here, but there's just so much freaking detail. And if these are actual pages, like looking at the ink on them would just be insane. And then of course the Aja strip is brilliant. Yeah, it's perfect. I'm not certain if I'm gonna say 10 out of 10. If I'm gonna say 100%, certainty that this is better than the first issue, but that just shows how great they both have been. It seems, Mike and I discussed offline that it seems like the third issue lineup, it looks slightly weaker than these first two, but it's hard to say. I'm interested to see Kelly Jones as always, even though I wonder, he must have done a black and white story before.
He has to have. I would be surprised if he hasn't.
But this series is great.
Yeah, and for the output of books of DC right now, it's not a future state book, so that's a plus. But also, like, this is a prestige format series that we hope doesn't go away anytime soon, because it has delivered in the first two issues. But Vince, you'll briefly talk about the we missed issue 1, but we have you picked up issue 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the word brief, but I'll try and get through this. So this is the second issue of The Other History of the DC Universe, written by John Ridley, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli, but actually he's doing layouts, and Andrea Cucci is doing finishes. I don't know precisely how that breaks down. The concept of the series is a take on the history of the DC Universe, which was a 2-issue, quote-unquote, non-fiction history of DC's, canon post-crisis, by Marv Wolfman and George Perez, who had just finished doing Crisis on Infinite Earths. So that series placed everything in chronological order. So like you saw, early on, like, I don't know, I forget the caveman character's name. It's like Tuck or something. I don't know. But then obviously, you have Joni Hex, you have Sergeant Rock, you have all the Western characters, and then you have the debuts of all the major heroes, and the post-crisis versions of like, Wonder Woman comes here, Batman comes here, through year one, Superman comes here through Man of Steel, and then some of the new characters, and then flash into some of the various future timelines, like the Legion of Superheroes, like OMAC and Commandy. It was more illustrations matched with prose than what we think of as superhero comics. So this one, is playing into that, but taking up the perspective of diverse characters, but also bringing in a little bit of more real world influence, twisting the DC history with the real world. So as Mike said, I missed talking about the first issue, which is about Black Lightning. So I just want to throw out some quick thoughts because I think this series is amazing. The first issue in particular, really great. It has some continuity wrinkles. Like it states that Superman was the first major hero on the scene, despite, Scott Snyder pulling all these recent Wonder Woman retcons. But as you go on and into the second issue as well, it's very obvious the series is taking an approach where it's basically post-crisis. So, that point in time where most of the pre-crisis stuff, the Earth 1 stuff, is still canon, but, with the post-crisis adjustments and events then. So, which I think is kind of funny because, like, that's not the canon in every other DC book we read. This is the canon I want to read. But Black Lightning, he makes some interesting insights on some of the other characters in the DC universe. He talked about how John Stewart is a hero to his people, but not necessarily for his people, because he's kind of like the backup Green Lantern. He's, more of a cosmic hero. He's slightly distanced. And then there's other notes on Superman, the Justice League, Vixen. This is the best take on, and it basically gets caught up to his run from 20 years ago. The art team is just brilliant. In this first issue, there's homages to different eras and artists, ranging from, there's like a Marshall Rogers Batman splash page. I think, I'm pretty certain it's Marshall Rogers. Or maybe it's not. I think it's from the Len Wein run. I don't know. But there's a Batman, which is a direct homage to some artist. And then there's even Mike Mignola when you see some Cosmic Odyssey stuff. Now, actually, on to the second issue, which I'm supposed to be talking about. This one's focused on Karen Beecher and Mal Duncan. The former, most people know as Bumblebee. The latter has had several identities, and that's basically what this issue is about. Both of them separately have narration here, and at points they are contradicting or correcting each other or disagreeing on something. So it's kind of interesting, technique through this non-traditional comics, writing. So a lot of this, like half of this issue is reliant on like late Silver Age and Bronze Age Teen Titans. So before New Teen Titans. And I'm a little bit less familiar with that era than, I don't know, Black Lightning and even obviously New Teen Titans era. So most of this I'm kind of taking at face value and, assuming that everything's accurate, and I assume it is. Once again, here we have direct artistic homages to Nick Cardy, to Kurt Swan, to George Perez. There's a pretty interesting take on those early Titans years as it kind of being a toxic environment, because the Titans basically, again, I'm not super familiar with the era, and I'm not going to, insert my perspective on those stories, but it's basically making the claim that like the Titans drove Aqualad mad, they drove Mal Duncan mad, and they point out like they don't shame it, but they're like, also recall that Roy is shooting up drugs in the background of all these missions, or at least for a small stretch. And then the new Titans, when they're formed, Mal kind of is uneasy about it because it's like he's happy for Vic Stone, the new Cyborg, who's a new Titan, the new Black Titan, but they just have one black person on the team. Like they don't have room for him and Karen. Both of these issues also interestingly comment on Supergirl, which I thought was interesting. They're both commenting on Superman as well, but the two Black Lightning and Mal, they both have different perspectives on Supergirl in particular, and especially because this second issue basically goes up and it kind of goes through Crisis. So we see Supergirl dying, and Mal's basically like, Donna, Superman should have placed Supergirl with the Titans because, most of the Titans are like, the sidekicks of various Justice League characters. So you have Robin, you have, Wonder Girl, you have Kid Flash, you have Speedy, but like Superman, like, up until way later eras, there was, Supergirl wasn't in the Titans. I mean, she was technically in the Legion, but different story. And Mal is like, Supergirl, if you really think about it, Supergirl, the pre-press version has a really weird history where, she appears on Earth and Clark is like, wow, my cousin's alive. But then there's like this weird dynamic where even though she spent more time on Krypton and everything, she's still younger than him, obviously. And the pre-crisis history is that Clark basically like told Kara, like, you got to be secret and stay in Smallville for like a long time. And then eventually he like has the public debut of his cousin. And I don't know how, what amount of time in universe it was supposed to be. But Mal Duncan is like, rightfully so, I think, if you think about it seriously, he's like, that's really weird. He was like hiding his cousin and raising her in secret. And then he's like, maybe she wouldn't have had certain issues. Maybe she wouldn't have died if she was connected to Titans. But TLDR, this is amazing. It's also really similar. Obviously, it's based on the DC version of this, but it's very similar to Mark Waid's History of the Marvel Universe, which I guess that was really pulling from this DC blueprint, but obviously with this different angle, this social and political angle. But this is just masterfully pulling together history on and off the page of DC Comics, and it's stunningly illustrated. This is really, really cool. And major creds to John Ridley. I'm not sure entirely what I expected here, but this dives deep. And I guess that's all the more disappointing, our reactions to some of his Batman so far.
Yeah, I wish that next Batman has been better. I have read the first issue. I'm just going to read this all when it's done, just because it seems better stylistically to read that way. Just because I want all of it now. But I'll focus on Daredevil number 26. Chip Zdarsky, Marco Cicchetto, Mike Hawthorne. Mike Hawthorne's drawing the Matt Murdock parts, while Marco Cicchetto's drawing the Elektra / everything else parts of this. So Matt Murdock is adjusting to life in prison and gets confronted about his privilege. Like, one inmate fully points out that in 2 years, Daredevil can go back to being whoever he was, while his life is going to carry his crime, and like all he was for possession for cocaine. So I actually like Zdarsky addressing that. Like, there's some big actual points here and kind of hypocrisy to Matt's actions. Like, yeah, Daredevil's going to prison, but like Matt Murdock can just, get out whenever he wants to, especially because, he's using his brother as his own lawyer, which we saw in the annual that Mike Hawthorne also drew that. Daredevil does come face to face with the warden, where he's like, hey, you're not going to get early parole. And the warden is actually the father of the Daredevil villain Crime Wave, aka Mason Hollis from Daredevil number 59. You can get like a cliff note there on that one. But then focusing on Elektra, she's adjusting to her new role as Daredevil, as she's kind of increasingly trying to find the reason for Matt's vow of no killing. Then basically King in Black strikes. Wilson Fisk is attempted to be like taken to his panic room as the invasion's going down. Typhoid Mary's there, but she gets nulled and then comes face to face with Elektra. So, and then inside the prison, the symbiotes are striking. And while Matt eventually does get out of his cell to try to help and fight in this invasion, he gets taken over by Null as well. Still good stuff. I think Dan and I had faith that Chip Zdarsky would be able to carry this book through a crossover, and he has. And traditionally, Daredevil usually manages to skirt and skip most crossovers, but it seems now that whatever kind of hit Marvel has on their hands, they need to find a way to, not only force that in, but because there are people that will buy anything with the King in Black banner on it, they also have to tie that in. So they go, well, Daredevil's well reviewed, and anyone will buy anything with the King in Black banner, so it gets slapped on here. But I think it does work well for what Chip Zdarsky has done.
Yeah, I agree. If there's one book that I would imagine that would survive this crossover, it would be Daredevil. Yeah, it doesn't really derail the story too much. I think if anything, I feel like it enhances it a little bit more, and I don't know, it's just a really interesting take. The art here though is just phenomenal. Like some of these action sequences at the end here, and the splash page at the end, um, that's just really dope. I mean, I know this is just like the inner Venom symbiote loving type of person coming out in all of us, but I really like that, and yeah, I'm excited to see how this goes. It's really cool to see Elektra too in the Daredevil costume throughout this whole
Yeah,
series
it's a
here.
really good design. That Marco Cicchetto Daredevil Electra mashup design. It looks good. Uh,
Yeah,
I and I don't know, Typhoid. Uh, Marco Cicchetto's like symbiote stuff, like the one mom that got nulled when was chasing her daughter with just like the sharp teeth. That's like scary and haunting. Typhoid Mary looks creepy, and then Mike Hawthorne's Matt Murdock symbiote null Daredevil thing also looks creepy. So it all works, but like at the same time, like I'm wishing this wasn't pulled in because I want to see what Zdarsky, really had planned, but it hasn't derailed it. Like you said, it's actually been pretty good.
yeah,
But normally the book that we used to lead off the show, I switched it up, Dan. I got a little tired of Amazing Spider-Man being the leadoff hitter, so I switched it to the middle of the lineup. But let me know what happened in Amazing Spider-Man this week.
yeah. So our next issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 58, written by Nick Spencer with art by Patrick Gleason. Oh wait, sorry, not by Patrick Gleason. It's by Marcelo Ferreira. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but I'm just that upset that it's not Gleason doing the art. Anyways, this issue starts a new storyline. Maybe not a new storyline, but it's part one of a storyline called Negative Space. We open to Peter monologuing about his demons, as one does from time to time. We then pan back to earlier, where we see Aunt May talking to Martin Lee, Mr. Negative, over there in, I guess it's called Feast. And she's talking to him about his time being under the control, excuse me, of the Sin Eater and the trauma that still stays with him through that experience. Meanwhile, Pete and Liz Allen are hanging out, and Pete gives her the bad news of what happened to Harry. As all of us know at this point, Harry is kindred, and Liz is denying it before Normie, her son, and Harry's son comes out and hears what's going on. Normie gets upset because the adults lie to him and say nothing's wrong, and he's like, all adults do is lie to me, and he shows Liz and Pete the goblin stash that Harry has in their home, and Pete's like, what the hell is going on here, right? All of a sudden the doorbell rings and Norman Osborn shows up to let Pete know that the Kingpin is targeting Feast and that he should go over there immediately. And obviously he does, to go save Aunt May. Pete runs off again to save her, and these like Mr. Negative's like disciples attack the building. Meanwhile, we see Wilson Fisk creating a plot to steal the Tablet of Life and Destiny. So I'm not sure if that's like, I guess it's not the same thing as the Petrified Tablet from like really far back in Amazing Spider-Man, but something about Fisk and going after tablets again kind of gets me thinking about that really early storyline. But yeah, we'll see. This is just, I guess, more fallout from this whole storyline with Kindred and stuff like that, but I'm not sure where this is all going. So I'm assuming Mr. Negative is going to have more of an impact here since it's called Negative Space, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, remember that if you remember when you're referencing Fisk getting the Tablet of Life and Destiny, are you talking like pre-Spencer run, or because he did get that earlier in the Spencer run? That was a dangling plot thread that we're just now getting back to. It's been a while.
No, I was thinking like back to like
Yeah,
Lee and Romita.
yeah, no. This is the dangling plot thread from Spencer, which that was, probably early 2020. That was when Otley was still drawing the book.
Oh, okay.
That was that was in the big when they found the dinosaur thing. If you remember that, that was that. But But yeah, this was good. He, Spencer still is actually, using some of the side characters. We haven't seen May in a while, so seeing the Feast Center is a good update. I like Mr. Negative. Obviously, star in that video game. He's a Dan Slott creation, but he was the main villain in the PS4 video game that came out. So there's a lot of imagery to go with that. Marcelo Ferrera's art is good. It's not Patrick Gleason, but I mean, I think we should also clarify, like, Marvel should just not say that Patrick Gleason's the ongoing artist and then only have him do 3 issues. That's the thing. Marcelo Ferrera's art is fine. Just don't announce a main artist for the title and then not have them do work for it, other than covers and 3 issues of interiors. Because Marcelo, don't take it as we're demeaning Marcelo Ferrera's work. His art's good. I like it, but and then I also like the Norman stuff / Harry stuff / Normie stuff. I like that we pulled Liz Allen here. I felt like you had to eventually at some point, because if we didn't, that would have just been a huge slight. Just slide over that. But I'm starting to think, Dan, there's 2 Harry Osborns.
Clone Saga?
No. There's pre One More Day Harry and post One More Day Harry. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
We already know Miles is getting the Clone Saga later this year.
Oh, okay. It's his turn to get derailed.
I mean, yeah. That's Miles Morales Clone Saga 2021.
There you go.
So, it's good. I don't know. I prefer this. Like, the Kindred stuff's now in the background. We can have a little fun arc where he fights Mr. Negative and then go from there. And then eventually, we'll have Pete versus Kindred round 2, I'm assuming. But, for now, I enjoyed what we got. Vince can talk about Fantastic Four.
Yes, and it's 28th issue by Dan Slott and R.B. Silva. So this isn't super new. Like, this did happen back in the day, but I do want to say that in this series, we currently have a universe-level threat. We have a Silver Surfer appearance and a mention of Ta-2, the ship of Galactus. All of that, to some extent, mostly conflicting, or questioning how it lines up with King in Black. I presume this takes place before King in Black. And also, obviously, Ta-2, we're following some developments on that in the Iron Man book. And Silver Surfer here, honestly, I don't think he's in his Silver Surfer Black thing, and that's another question, which is a big question. But I can't say with 100% certainty based on the coloring how I'm pretty sure he's not, though. But other than that, my slight confusion on that, the coloring in this issue is absolutely fantastic. It's especially vibrant, and it has a little bit of relevance to pieces of the story. There's just some really, really explosive and fun-looking pages here. There's also tons of exposition and backstory initially in the book told through dialogue, where Johnny's new girlfriend, Skye, she's basically like the audience insert character. She's like, what's the ultimate nullifier? Who is this character? When did you last meet this person? Who's the Silver Surfer? And it's like slightly distracting as someone who obviously, knows all this stuff with the Fantastic Four and has sort of been following this run, even if I haven't all 28 issues. But at the same time, I respect it. I don't think it's done in a terrible way. And I think it's a lost art of actually, getting, catching readers up on what they're reading without completely hammering them over the head with it. But in the actual story, they're fighting the Griever, that universe-level threat. It comes to a big climax. Johnny, and in the process, has to save Dragon Man, then the Thing, then his sister, and Reed. And there's a little bit of a tease that Reed is eventually, years down the line, or maybe a couple issues from now, potentially do something to Ben. And Ben kind of, is teased with that, but doesn't know exactly what it is. But Reed seems to know what it is. And so there's kind of a tease there for potentially future arcs and tension. But, they save the day, and, well, they don't. So Franklin is about to sacrifice his life with the ultimate nullifier to take care of the Griever. And then Reed basically, goes big brain mode and basically solves the riddle for how to resolve a peaceful conclusion. And this issue in particular, because of some of the various things I mentioned, feels very classic, and I think I'm good with that here. I think that is fine for Fantastic Four. You know, it's not Jonathan Hickman, but I'll take it.
All right, X-Men Corner has returned. We have 3 X-Men books, so a full corner has returned, I feel, for the X-Men books. Wolverine number 9, Ben Percy, Adam Kubert, and Frank Martin. I think I can't remember if I read number 8 or not, but thankfully there's a recap page, so I caught up. Wolverine's in Madripoor as Patch to bid and win back his buddy Maverick, who was captured and is on the auction block. And then there's like all these different items available, like Black Widow's cyanide tooth or Cap's mask that he was found in after being in the ice. And then also like the severed hand of Wolverine. And like different villains are in the background here too. So we see the Kingpin, but also like the Peacock Man is there too, which was, I think a running thing in not only X-Force but Wolverine. It would make sense since Percy's writing both books. But like Wolverine sees his own severed hand on the auction block, and he like breaks his glass that he was drinking out of, and we see the Peacock Man like pick up the glass stained with Logan's blood. So I can't imagine that, that's definitely going to come back. But a very kind of, if you just are raising past the issue, you totally just forget that you saw that. So that was really cool of a cool plant by Percy and Kubert here. Whole deal though is that Logan and Maverick made like a pact together back when they were on Team X that they would be better people and not let the other fall for like the mind washing stuff again. So he hopes to like free him here and not let him become a weapon again. Wolverine's cover obviously gets blown, and then he's got to fight out of it, but manages to reach Maverick because they got like a code word trigger phrase to each other. So next issue they'll probably team up fighting their way out of Madripoor. Fun stuff, but kind of a really like a setup issue for all intents and purposes.
New Mutants number 15 by Vita Ayala and Rod Reese. Some of the kids are fighting, so Magic is going to teach them about bullying. And then we don't really get back to that in this issue, while the Shadow King is still manipulating some of them, including Annual, which, again, I bitched about this last issue, but I don't really like that because Annual is like, he's supposed to be a full X-Men. He's graduated. He's older than all of these other characters. For him to be in his general position in this book at all is kind of dumb, but specifically being one of the kids manipulated by the Shadow King, whatever. Daken is trying to get it on with Aurora, but is cock-blocked by Scout, aka formerly known as Honey Badger, Laura Kinney's little sister, and I guess his sideways sister clone. And she's just really bummed about everything. Daken kind of brushes her off. Laura is still missing because she went in the portal thingy in one of the issues of X-Men. And there's other things. She's trying to be friends with some of the other kids who are in this like kind of training group. And she remembers them from Age of X-Man, which was that dumb, crossover that take place at the same time as Matt Rosenberg's run. But from their perspective, they died way back on Genosha and have been revived from that state in their lives. So they have no idea who she is. And obviously that's pretty confusing and depressing for her. And then we shift things to the OG New Mutants because we get a deep dive on Wolfsbane's son not being on the resurrection list. And she's real bummed out because she's like, hey, I have a son who died and everyone's being resurrected and this is supposed to be paradise. And I want my son. And then there's an official wedding party for Cypher and Bay from the Ten of Swords. They already got married. And in fact, they already went on their honeymoon, but they want to throw a party on Krakoa. And one of the new young characters who was rescued in, I believe, in one of the early issues of this series, Cosmar, she's like this girl who can just completely manipulate reality and things. She wants to enter the Crucible because from her perspective, she feels that essentially wants to kill herself and reboot because her reality warping powers essentially have warped her own body. And Danny Moonstar's like, no, you're appealing to human ideals. And this was like the classic, this is the classic split, with certain mutants where it's like, Danny Moonstar, your powers don't make you look like a weirdo. But, Glauber Herman, his do and everything like that, but obviously Glob, those that is his mutation. But with this new character Cosmar, she doesn't know whether, if she was resurrected, whether she would still look like she does. And it obviously bothers her, but Danny Moonstar kind of pushes her away. And then the kid is like, really annoyed, well, really, frustrated by that and runs off. And her powers are, again, like insane, and she's very emotional. So maybe some shit's about to go down. And she's one of the Shadow King kids. So I'm sure it's leading to more stuff there. It seems Ayala is trying to tie their run a bit to X Factor, which makes sense as they are close friends with Leah Williams and also with Teenia Howard, who's on Excalibur. There's fun stuff here. Rod Reese is great. This feels like an inmate running the Asylum book. Ayala is clearly a mega fan of the X-Men, but so far in a good way, and I'm enjoying this.
All right, I might have to get back on this. I was waiting for this arc to get over before I jump back on, but if they're referencing Wolfsbane's kid from that Peter David X Factor run, I might have to quickly catch up and see what's going to go on with that, because that was a huge arc in David's X Factor in the 2000s. But our final X-Men book, X-Men number 17, Jonathan Hickman and Brett Booth. So if you like Brett Booth, or your mileage is going to vary on this. I personally like Booth's art, and this is very much leaning into 1990s chic here, right down to Cyclops and Jean wearing their X Factor uniforms for absolutely no reason, but it looked cool. And then Cyclops, Jean, and Storm are tasked by the Shi'Ar to save Xandra, who's been captured by like these religious zealots. So they got to team up with Smasher to get, and then they also get some help on the side from Cannonball and Sunspot. So just basically ensue Brett Booth drawing a giant Michael Bay-esque big budget rescue mission. Like every other page is like a giant splash page, and it looks awesome. They got to fight a big, like the big leader zealots, like a giant monster looking guy. He's got a robot arm because robot arms are cool. They managed to beat him, and then Xandra promises Storm a favor that she can cash in on later. So that's knowing Hickman, that'll probably happen in some offshoot book, a year, 3 weeks from now, who knows. But I enjoyed this, and also at the end, you can go to Marvel's website to vote for the final member of this year's X-Men team. I voted for Polaris, who is, last I checked, was leading. It was like 22% her, and then in second with like 18% was like Banshee. So interesting to see who's gonna make it onto the team, because Polaris is on X Factor. Like she's like the leader of the X Factor book right now. So, and I think they already said like, yeah, some people's books are going to get changed around depending on who people vote for, which it seems like a double-edged sword type of idea. But overall, this is the issue for Brett Booth to, really let loose. And I enjoyed it, retro costumes and all.
Yeah, I've seen some minor controversy online about, fans of X Factor and Leah Williams saying like, hey, don't take her character away. This whole voting thing, it reminds me of You Decide, which was a Bill Jemas kind of fan vote thing way back in the day, where it was, you basically got to vote on which book would continue, and the three choices were Bill Jemas on Marvel, which is like one of the worst comics ever made, Ultimate Adventures, which is like this Batman and Robin parody in the Ultimate Universe, which is one of the worst books ever made, and then Peter David's somewhat obscure but fan favorite Captain Marvel run with Gina Savell. I voted for Cannonball, but honestly, I didn't give it too much thought, because even Cannonball, like he already has his own status quo. And also, I don't even know what I'm voting for. Like, is this primary X-Men book about to become an actual team book with actual ongoing arcs? Or are we just voting for one issue of this series? Or are we voting on the team for, one of the members on a team for another freaking title? Because I don't want that. So I don't even know any of the context.
The context is, I think Psyche and Jean want the X-Men to be representative of all of Krakoa. So they want, the people of Krakoa to decide the team. And I guess we, the fans, are playing the mutants on the island to
Yeah,
pick
sure.
a team member.
But
assuming it would be an X-Men, but like I don't see this book, turning into an actual team book anytime soon. It's been 17 issues and everything's kind of been a snapshot.
Yeah. On this actual book, honestly, I used to hate Brett Booth. I didn't really discover and dig deeper into his earlier work, like at Image, until after I discovered him on some of what just happened to be some of the absolute worst parts of the New 52. He was on the opening Teen Titans run, and then he was on Flash after Manipul left and all that, with like the shitty like third version of Reverse Flash and all that stuff. Or even earlier, like probably one of the earliest things I knew him from is he was, I don't know if he was the first artist or just one of the arcs on James Robinson's Justice League, and I thought it was just not a good fit. And then I don't know if you all like, if you ever go to like discount stores that have like remaindered comics and stuff, you'll always see these weird Anita Blake books, which are like these like, I don't know if they're prose adaptations or if they just took a prose writer to do graphic novels, and it's like a vampire hunter thing. And Brett Booth draws some of them, and I only just associate them with like stores and websites having them in like the deepest discount bins and no one's touching them. But I've since come around. I'm very much a 90s apologist in certain ways, and I think his art is a perfect match for some things, and this is definitely one of them. This feels like a throwback, and I think intentionally, to something like the Crossroads art from Claremont and Lee, which was a Shi'Ar shindig. And there's other things like, Scott and Jean are kind of in their X Factor costumes. Their second, I guess I don't know. Well, they're in their X Factor costumes. And so I'm also thinking kind of the arc, I think it's called Judgment War from Louis Simonson's run, which was like a big, like 10-issue cosmic arc in X Factor. So I think this is cool. This is probably one of the, I don't know that it's the best, but this is one of the X-Men issues that I've enjoyed the most, or that's, been felt actually worthwhile to me, rather than all these other ones where it's like, let me do this like super like science fiction-y one-off thing that I might come back to in 3 years, like with the X-23 stuff, which I referenced, on our previous book.
Yeah, it definitely had the most X-Men throwback feel to it, especially with the art. I will say though, Brett Booth did do art on New 52 Nightwing, which is a book that I read as back when I read single issues back in school, like I think back when the New 52. It's weird to say that, like, whatever. But yeah, I think he was the second artist on that. So it was a series that that Kyle Higgins Nightwing run is near and dear to my heart, because I read it. Like, I know I have like weird middle school nostalgia for that book, and him and Eddie Barrows were two good artists that I really liked on that series.
I just randomly pulled up Booth's Wikipedia page, and it says that he stated to Newsarama at some point he had been pushing for Wally West to enter the New 52 for a while, and became the artist for Flash Annual 3, the first New 52 appearance of Wally. But I'm not certain if that's referring to Wallace or Wally, and I assume he was not pushing for Wallace. It'd be funny if he's like, I really love Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, let's have Wally West, and then DC's like, here's Wally West, have fun, Brett Booth. And then of course he did Flash Forward with Wally, and then it's like, I'm sure he was not a fan of, he may not have been a fan of the scripts he was actually doing. All right.
Yeah.
But
all right, Vince, what I'm about to say, you're gonna hate what happens in this book, but it was a damn good issue. And if we just turn our brains off because it's Black Label, we can do whatever we want with that. Wait, no, this is Strange Academy. This is you. I'm dumb.
I was just going to let you ride it, and then we could just flip the order. But Strange Academy #7 by Scotty Young, Humberto Ramos. I swear I just talked about the last issue. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Maybe they got on a weird schedule. This one opens with Emily having a nightmare of catching on fire, trying to kiss Doyle, who's Dormammu's son, and they've kind of been teasing a relationship. And again, that was a nightmare. So then we get a little bit of the past as we ended the last issue in the last arc. She had magic infecting every cell of her body. So Doctor Strange takes her to Hogarth, who is, one of the like magic entities to help out. And in the process, Strange basically discards Doyle because it's like, I don't think we can help him, and she's the priority. But Dr. Voodoo is like, you're an asshole. I'm going to try and do something, actually. So he goes to the dark dimension to try and see if he can get the kid's father, Dormammu, to help out. But no cigar there. Everything is fucked and really tragic in this issue. Ramos does some amazing character work here, though there's one prominent face, and every other panel on the page is like really great. Granted, if you like Ramos to an extent, but even if you're like iffy on him, there's one panel where Emily has just a really weird face, and even me, and I like Ramos, it stands out. But otherwise, the rest of the page is like perfect, emotion, and it reminds me a lot of the one arc from Paul Jenkins. Paul Jenkins' Spider-Man run with Ramos, where it's a Venom arc when he has cancer, and there's a super emotional scene. But this is even like there's a worse face, but all the other faces are good. It's very strange. But in the end, Emily kisses Doyle's dead skull, and his fire lights back up, and ta-da, he's back. This book is great. I'm sure that, it's a very cliche, like, ooh, she revived him with the power of love, but I'm sure it's like, magic shenanigans. I'm really enjoying this. And this was actually like a genuinely emotional issue. And now you can talk about the other book called Strange A.
Yeah, not only that, it was one number off. And it was a Strange Academy 7, Strange Adventures 8, both strange, both with an A word in front of it. I apologize. But I love the blooper for what we got. So I'll leave it with that. But Strange Adventures number 8, Tom King, Mitch Gerrits, and Evan Doc Shaner. I would say that this is the issue where it's all starting to come together. It's also, I definitely think it's the most action-packed of these. It's like all drama of the Justice League trying to fight the Pix invasion. And Batman's just like, he realizes in mid-fight that they left a gap in the defenses. But like even before that, it's like these wide camera shots of like focusing on one hero trying to do their most in the invasion. Like Superman's in space, Batman's flying the Batwing, Wonder Woman's trying to, lead some other heroes against them. Some pretty cool like way to open it. But like I said, Batman realizes there's a gap left in the defenses, and he's like, Flash, get to Phoenix and search for survivors, because Phoenix, Arizona just gets blown off, just completely off the map. I will note that I believe Mitch Gerrits lives in Arizona, so interesting to see that he blows up a city in his own home state. I think that's kind of funny. But yeah, there's two pretty good scenes with the Flash where he's just like, I can't, like he's moving so fast, but he can't find like any survivors. But Mr. Terrific manages to capture one of the Pix soldiers, and he and Batman proceed to interrogate the alien to learn more of their ways and learn more about Adam Strange and how to beat them and stuff. And then in the flashbacks, we see like the still rattled Adam from his torture, trying to readjust back on Rand. This is like obviously I said in the flashbacks, but he still like has to fight this war, so he's like super irritable and he's getting into fights with Alana, and he isn't spending enough time with his daughter Aaliyah. And he eventually gets like the call to perform an interrogation on one of the captured Pix soldiers, and he just like straight up murders them. And so that's like a pretty huge moment. And the issue ends with Adam remembering the time he took Aaliyah into the woods to finally spend time with his daughter, and this is obviously leading to that last time he saw her. So that's okay, we know it's not going to go well. But it's that Tom King issue where it's like, okay, we're starting to see the dominoes fall here, and it's all spinning back around. So that's what you wait for in these books. I don't think this was on my, I wasn't super, high on the favorites for this one, but now it's at that point where I'm like, okay, I'll have fun trying to, judge it up against the other maxi series here. Obviously, nothing in real characterization to the Adam Strange we know, and I think if you have a great love for that, this is going to be a little bit of a hard stomach pill to swallow, but at least, it's got the Black Label on it, so it's not in continuity / is it? I don't know. I enjoyed the Michael Holt and Batman interrogation, though. There's pretty fun stuff where think SpongeBob when he goes to rock bottom with their language. Batman essentially does the same thing with the Picts trying to do their language. It actually is played for a pretty good joke there. But the end of it is, Adam Strange is surrounded in this bunker, surrounded by like a bunch of bodies as the JLA call out radios, like any other reserve members here, we need you to fight. And it's like, basically he's sitting there, camera pulls back. That's the end of the issue. Really good issue. I enjoy this book. I'm interested to see how it's all going to shake out and what truth will be revealed in the last one. And our final book of the rundown, it's the retro book. Dan's back, everybody. He was gone for like the whole show.
Yes, I was. So I'm back, and I'm doing a retro issue for what feels like. Actually, no, I think I did one a few weeks ago. Anyways, our retro issue comes from July 1973, which is Tomb of Dracula number 10. Written by Marv Wolfman with art by Gene Colan. This issue features the first appearance of Blade, so that's why I chose it. So really cool to read the first appearance of Blade. Our story opens to Blade saving a young couple from a trio of vampires. So he kind of runs off after that. Elsewhere on a private ship, Dracula is entertaining guests, as he normally does, I guess, and comes off as a distant ancestor instead of the real Dracula to these people. So you don't want to give away that you're really Dracula, right? Slowly, Dracula takes over the ship and the guests aboard. Unbeknownst to him, though, Blade has snuck aboard and goes after Dracula. Meanwhile, the guests use a crucifix to confront Dracula as Blade comes face to face with the vampire at last. In a staged challenge for control of the ship, Dracula and Blade eventually allowing Dracula to escape through a distraction when a woman who Dracula sucked the blood from earlier is thrown at Blade, kind of allowing Dracula to escape. Dracula then tells everyone aboard that there are explosives underneath the ship, which causes everyone to jump overboard, except for Dracula's assistant, Clifton, who is killed in the explosion. So that is kind of how our issue ends. I thought this was a pretty cool issue. Obviously it's early 70s, so, this era of Marvel, I wouldn't say it's the most notable time for them, but a lot of good stuff, a lot of new things happening in this decade for Marvel, and the introduction of Blade, I feel like they wouldn't have been able to do this 10 years ago because of the Comics Code, but having a character back and having Dracula in main Marvel 616 continuity is hilarious to me. But yeah, I thought it was good. What did you guys think?
I thought it was interesting because Dracula is your main character here. It does open with Blade, and of course, and if you've never seen the cover, I mean, obviously, the cover is in the rundown video that we put out every week. But like, I think everyone, if you're unfamiliar, Blade didn't have like the leather trench coat and the black sunglasses yet. He had like bright orange goggles and a green pants and like a green like flight jacket essentially. And it's a very wildly different look from what he'd get. And he kind of shows up and he kicks some ass, but then like he doesn't really do, like, no hint that he's half vampire here at all. A very not fleshed out really, because there's been times when, like, if you read first appearances of characters, like, okay, they're fully fleshed out from the beginning. Here's an example where it's not, and they add to it as it goes on. I think I'll pull through like the beginning, like if you remember like the first appearance of Gambit, he's already got the Cajun accent and everything down like that. This here, no, very much like you'll add to this as time goes on. But the most interesting part of this was like seeing Dracula as your main, he's your protagonist in this book, and that's just kind of a weird thing to see. And then also like Dan, you said it's in the Marvel 616, but it feels like the most deviated thing from the 616 Marvel that I've ever read. This does read like something that Marvel published that, they had the license, but it's not in their universe, but yet it is.
Yeah, I think this is fun. I mean, Gene Colan, there's panels where you can see kind of his more experimental and later era where he's a lot more sketchier. But and the whole thing looks fantastic. I think it's a really fun introduction to Blade. And yeah, I think Tomb of Dracula is really interesting because it's like it teeters on, being connected to the Marvel Universe, but being mostly removed from it. And you have certain mature elements, but also not. Like, it's just hilarious, how Dracula finds this girl and is basically like, "You're really smart." And he's like, it's not 100% clear, but like Dracula's like clearly fucking with this girl. He's like, "You're so smart," and she's like, "Never, no one's ever told me that." And he's like, "Come back to my room," and then he just like bites her, and then tells his henchman like, "Keep this passed out woman who I just bit and sucked her blood. Just keep her here, and because I might want to like suck her blood again later." And then she comes out later. It's pretty funny. And then Blade is a badass. He looks looks funny in retrospect, but I also think it's kind of classic. It's just like obviously this is a Dracula book. It doesn't become a Blade book. Like Blade, I think the series is like 70 issues or something. Blade probably only appears in like maybe a dozen, maybe 18 issues max through the course of the run. It's not like it becomes a Blade book, but it's weird because especially when they had 3 movies, and granted one of them is terrible, but like Marvel has never fully figured out how to like really have Blade stick around and be a popular character. And I'm just waiting for that to happen. Like I've speculated, like I don't know that this is something he wants to do, but like Donny Cates could just randomly decide like, I'm going to make Blade one of Marvel's top 10 characters. Like he could probably pull that off. And like maybe Bendis could have done that, 15 years ago. But it's like never fully stuck. I mean, the height of the character is probably like, in the Midnight Suns era in the mid to late 90s when he's in Night Stalkers and then has a solo series for a bit. But especially with the movies, like he's like low key one of my favorite characters, especially like he's one of the characters in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which I played a ton as a kid, where I think it's him and Black Panther, where they're like, you can unlock them easily, but they're like specifically unlocked in a certain way. I think it's like mini games or like a specific challenge you have to do in the game. And of course, this classic costume, I'm pretty sure was one of the alternates.
Yeah.
And the first 2 movies are amazing in a very campy way. Blade is awesome.
I wanted to mention that Blade has more success outside of the comic book realm than inside of it. Because even like obviously the movies were a big thing. No one knew that was based on the comic when it came out. Obviously, that's predating like things like the first X-Men, the first Spider-Man, things like that. But also, like he's a big part of that Spider-Man animated series cartoon. Obviously, parlaying that off the success of the movie. But like you said, Ultimate Alliance. Like I think you find him in Murder World. I believe he's stuck inside of a claw game machine. And you fish him out, and he's just like, "Yeah, I'll come join you guys to beat arcade." And but he's got all like the aesthetic elements like that make a fun character. Like, okay, he wears sunglasses all the time. He has a sword that sometimes is a laser sword, but he's also got these other cool weapons too. He's been played by Wesley Snipes. He's got a movie that's made by Guillermo del Toro. Like stylistically, everything is there that's badass. And then now he's about to be played by arguably the best actor in Hollywood right now, which is crazy. And let's keep in mind that Mahershala Ali contacted Kevin Feige and was like, "I want to do Blade." It wasn't like Feige asked him. I believe the exact quote was, "When Mahershala calls, you listen," and that's how we're getting a Blade movie, which is pretty cool. And then also like he had like 1 season of a TV show that I don't think was very good on Spike, but he predates other characters getting TV shows. Like look at the CW. Like that's the DC TV network. And Blade had a TV show on Spike TV that was like only 8 episodes, but like a decade before anyone else had a TV show that was live action. That's pretty interesting thing for that character.
He was born ready, motherfucker.
So many great lines in that first Blade movie. Picks of the week, guys.
I'm going to give it to, it's really tight between these 2 Black Label books. I'm going to give it to Batman. But Other History, very close. If it was the first issue of Other History, I would have given it to that, but that didn't come out this week.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Batman Black and White #2.
Same.
All right. So I think that's 2 weeks in a row, guys, that we have hat trick picks. Or no, a week before that was hat tricks. We split 2-1 the week previously. But, 4 shows in this year, I think, and we've already had 2 hat trick picks of the week, which is interesting. That's it for the regular rundown. We still got Future State to do, and it might be our last one of deviating the split. We'll cover that in not too much longer from now. But stay safe out there. Take care. We'll see you next week for the regular rundown.